Something doesn't add up because one private email wasn't supposed to escape, and yet here it is, floating across headlines, tearing through Meghan Markle's carefully staged Australia comeback before it even begins. One message, one leak, and suddenly the entire narrative flips. Was this a mistake, or was someone quietly pulling a thread that was never meant to unravel?
To push forward, well, what better way to do that than to go to these countries and sort of test run how the business could go if they expand into Australia? I think nothing has been confirmed, but certainly it feels like that's the mood music.
And what do they know her to be? A gold-digging grifter.
The timing feels almost too perfect or too dangerous. Right when Meghan was preparing to step back into the spotlight, aiming to rebuild momentum, polish perception, and remind the world of her influence, boom. A leak. Not just any leak, but something insiders are calling a glimpse behind the curtain. And that's where the real tension begins, because once the public gets even a peek backstage, they don't stop there. They dig, they question, they connect dots that were never meant to be connected. And now the whispers are getting louder. What exactly was in that email? Why did it trigger such an immediate reaction? And more importantly, who benefits from this suddenly going public?
Well, no, can I just tell you that Australia has tackled illegal immigration very successfully. And I think given the fact that Harry and Meghan are on their way, I think it's time to reactivate Operation Sovereign Borders, Paul. Just, airstrikes, get the boats out. Because no, the bottom line is, I mean, I can't speak for your viewers, but I will tell you that lots of Australian viewers of the Mark Dolan show don't want to see Harry and Meghan. The reason why it went down well in 2018, Paul, is because the Australian public didn't know Meghan Markle very well. Well, they know her now.
Here's where things start to feel complicated. The email wasn't scandalous on the surface. No explosive confession, no shocking revelation, just planning details, logistics, schedules, behind-the-scenes coordination. Ordinary, right? But that's exactly why it's explosive, because normal details, when exposed, create abnormal questions. Suddenly, people aren't just looking at what Meghan is doing, they're analyzing how she's doing it. And that's when the spotlight shifts, away from the message, straight onto the method. Because this wasn't just any appearance. This was tied to a luxury women's retreat, a word that sounds empowering until people notice what's attached to it. High-end, exclusive, carefully curated. And then comes the detail that changed everything, the price.
So interesting. I was actually on that royal tour back in 2018, and the optics for us at that time, because we didn't know what was going on behind the scenes, and to Tom Bauer's book, I mean, these are the claims that he's talking about. It's the lead up to Megxit. But for us as journalists and members of the public seeing that tour, it looked like a huge success. There were thousands of people greeting them everywhere. They were so popular at that time. It felt like this really huge moment for them and a really exciting moment for the monarchy. Now, as we know, that wasn't how they felt about it behind the scenes. And, 18 months later, they had left the royal family.
Thousands of dollars. Let that sit for a second. Thousands for empowerment. And suddenly the narrative cracks open. Critics didn't hesitate. They didn't wait. They pounced. Because now the question isn't just about the event, it's about the contradiction. If this is about inclusivity, why does it feel so exclusive? And that's where the tension starts to boil. Supporters rush in, defending the pricing, the brand, the experience, saying this is normal for celebrity-led events. But critics, they see something else entirely. A pattern, a gap, a disconnect between message and reality. And once that gap becomes visible, it's impossible to ignore. But here's the part no one can answer yet. And maybe that's the most unsettling piece of all. Was this leak accidental or intentional? Because think about it. In a world where every detail is tightly controlled, every move calculated, every appearance curated, how does a private email just slip out? Just like that? No proof, no confirmation, just suspicion. And suspicion spreads faster than facts.
But apparently Australia holds a special place in the handlers' minds, because somehow they think Australia has been kinder to the formers than anywhere else. I'm pretty sure Australia's not massive fans.
Now the conversation isn't just about a retreat. It's about perception versus reality, advocacy versus lifestyle, message versus optics. And suddenly, this one email feels like more than just a mistake. It feels like a trigger, a spark that ignited something much bigger. Because people aren't just reacting to the leak, they're reacting to what it represents. suspense. And then, just when you think the story couldn't get more layered, another detail quietly slips into focus. The location, Australia. Not just any destination, but a place tied to one of Meghan and Harry's most celebrated moments. Back in 2018, it was all applause, admiration, momentum, crowds, energy, headlines glowing with positivity. That trip wasn't just successful, it was symbolic. But now, the energy feels different because this isn't the same Meghan, this isn't the same narrative, and definitely not the same public perception. Since stepping away from royal life, everything has changed. The projects, the image, the reactions. Every move now comes with scrutiny attached. Every appearance carries weight. And every detail, no matter how small, gets dissected. Which brings us back to the present moment and the real question no one can ignore. Was this Australia trip supposed to reset the story? Or has the story already been rewritten? Because right now, it's no longer about excitement. It's about curiosity, about doubt, about what else might still be hidden beneath the surface. And insiders are starting to whisper something even more unsettling, that the real fear isn't the email we've already seen. It's the ones we haven't. Because if one message made it out, what's stopping another? And if more details start surfacing, this isn't just a controversy anymore. It becomes a pattern. And once people start seeing patterns, they don't look away. They lean in. And that's exactly where things start getting dangerous. And this is where the story stops being about one leaked email and starts feeling like something much bigger. Something that's been quietly building for years, waiting for the right moment to surface. Because now the noise isn't slowing down, it's multiplying. The retreat, the pricing, the timing, the history. It's all colliding at once. And the internet is doing what it always does when pieces don't quite fit. It starts filling in the gaps itself. And the reactions, they're not subtle. They're sharp, brutal, suspicious. People aren't just asking questions anymore. They're forming conclusions. They're looking at the luxury retreat and asking, who is this really for? They're looking at the messaging and asking, does it match the reality? And they're looking at Meghan herself and asking the one question that refuses to go away, has the image always been carefully crafted, or is it starting to crack? Because once perception starts shifting, it rarely shifts back quietly. The price tag didn't just raise eyebrows, it triggered a full-blown debate. Thousands of dollars for a seat. Thousands just to be in the same room. And suddenly, empowerment starts to sound expensive. Critics didn't hold back. They turned sarcasm into ammunition. They questioned the value, the authenticity, the entire concept. And the louder the criticism got, the more it began to echo a familiar pattern. One that has followed Meghan through interviews, projects, and public appearances. A pattern of contrast. Supporters see ambition. Critics see contradiction. Supporters see influence. Critics see exclusivity. And this time, the leak poured fuel directly onto that divide, because now it's not just speculation, it's documentation, a private email, a behind-the-scenes look, a glimpse into how things are really organized when the cameras aren't rolling. And that kind of visibility, it changes everything. Some observers are already saying the retreat itself might not even matter anymore, that the controversy has grown so loud it's swallowing the original purpose entirely, because once the conversation turns to perception, it's almost impossible to redirect it. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. The jokes. Not whispers, not quiet criticism, public viral mockery, comments questioning what people are really paying for, sarcastic takes on speeches, appearances, even value. And while some dismiss it as online noise, others see it as something deeper, a shift. Because mockery isn't just criticism, it's a sign the narrative is slipping out of control. And once that happens, regaining it becomes a battle. But then, just when the focus seems locked on Meghan, the story widens. Because this isn't just about her, it's about them, Harry and Meghan, their past, their choices, their post-royal life, every deal, every interview, every move they've made since stepping away from the royal family. It all gets pulled back into the spotlight. And suddenly, this email leak isn't isolated anymore. It's connected. Australia becomes more than a location. It becomes a comparison. Then versus now. Applause versus scrutiny. Celebration versus suspicion. Back then, they were untouchable. Now, everything is questioned, even intentions. And that's what makes this moment feel different. Not louder, but heavier. Because the stakes aren't just about one trip. They're about credibility, about influence, about control over a narrative that's starting to feel unpredictable. And insiders, they're not ignoring it. They can. Because behind the scenes, something is shifting. Quiet adjustments, subtle changes, conversations happening away from cameras, schedules being reviewed, details being reconsidered. Not officially confirmed, but strongly suggested. Which raises another question that no one can answer yet. Are these changes damage control or preparation for something worse? Because if the concern is already this high, what are they expecting next? And then comes the most unsettling possibility of all. More leaks, more details, more glimpses behind the curtain. Because the fear isn't just about what's already out there, it's about what could still emerge. Emails, plans, conversations, pieces of a bigger picture that hasn't fully surfaced yet. And if that happens, this story doesn't just continue. It escalates, because once the public starts connecting multiple leaks, they don't see coincidence. They see intention, and intention changes everything. Now the world is watching differently, not just observing, but anticipating, waiting for the next detail, the next slip, the next reveal. And that waiting, it builds tension, because every silence now feels suspicious. Every delay feels strategic. Every appearance feels calculated. And the closer the Australia trip gets, the more intense that feeling becomes. Will everything go ahead as planned? Will the narrative be reclaimed? Or has the story already slipped too far into public hands to control? Because right now, it doesn't feel like a simple controversy. It feels like a turning point, a moment where perception could shift permanently, a moment where one leaked email quietly unlocked a much bigger conversation. And maybe that's the real story hiding underneath all of this. Not the retreat, not the price, not even the leak itself, but what it exposed. Because once people believe they've seen behind the curtain, they don't just watch the show anymore. They start looking for what else is being hidden. And that's when the real story begins.